for melodic heavy metal. Playing it heavier, louder, raunchier, faster. This is the Signals of Intuition. There's some brand new Jorn right there from Heavy Rock Radio 2, Executing the Classics, his new record. That song, one of the lead-off singles from that record, that was Needles and Pins, originally done by Jackie DeShannon. That album featuring covers from a number of other bands, including Bob Dylan, Dio, Deep Purple, and even a Don Henley cover in there. You're listening to the Signals of Intuition, your home for melodic hard rock and heavy metal. Tonight on the show, we've got the singer of that record, Mr. Jorn Lande, who you might know as the singer of a number of hard rock and power metal albums. He's a singer in Avantasia. He's worked with Masterplan, who feature members of Halloween. He's also played with the progressive bands Arc and Millennium, Beyond Twilight, and he's known for his works with Russell Allen and Vagabond, featuring members of TNT. Let's get Jorn on the line right now.
Hey, Brandon.
Hey, Jorn, how's it going?
I'm fine, thank you. You too?
I'm doing good, yeah. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for taking the time to...
Yeah, no problem, man. I got some time off anyway, so it's no stress.
Oh, good.
And, I like to talk, so everyone knows that.
A friend of mine interviewed you a couple years ago, and he said the same thing. It's like, just get about a dozen questions ready, you'll be good. Jorn can talk.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're better off only having a few questions, because then the interview will be like normal length. But then again, when you had a lot of stuff happening, in your life, and you've been around for a while, it's always a lot of questions, and it's not always right not to answer them properly. I also like to give proper answers to some of the questions, because some of the questions are, relevant to more people than just the person I'm talking to. So it's kind of like people wonder about stuff that happened in the past, and there's various stories or versions going on about what happened in incidents, positive, negative stuff, whatever it is, so it's good to give a proper answer, and people deserve that. They're like, buying the records, and they're there every year, so it's kind of like people deserve it too,
Mm-hmm. Well, we want to know your story. We hear the music. We want to know what goes on behind it.
Yeah, thankfully. Yeah.
So when I do these, I always like to start at the beginning of you as a musician and then work our way up to the new record. Starting at the beginning of kind of, everything, really, where did you grow up and how did you get started in music?
Yeah, well, I grew up in a small town in the heart of Norway. It's a town called Rjukan. It has a lot of history, and, Kirk Douglas recently passed away, did the movie about one of the historic war events that went down there, about the heavy water that Hitler wanted to produce the atomic bomb. So it's a lot of history there, and industrial history as well. One of the first places to produce electricity in Norway. So anyway, a small town, just a few thousand people living there. The sun is absent half the year, between like October and March, because of the mountains. So when you look out the window, you have to like stick your head out and look up, and then you see what type of weather to be expected, like if you want to see a blue sky, you have to, or you look out and, or else you just look straight into the dark gray wall. So maybe that affected some of my music as well, in the direction of music, because I grew up with a lot of stuff like Elvis, like all the crooners, Rod Stewart, John Farnham from Australia. I loved more like alternative stuff. And, if you look at the metal and the heavier rock that I've been doing mostly, or what I'm mostly known for. So I guess it kind of colored my evolution as an artist, I guess. Yeah. But that's one of the reasons with the heavy rock radio albums that are based on covers that I grew up with or songs that I discovered that would sound great in a more Jorn style arrangement. And so we introduced the term to Jornify a song with the first heavy rock radio album, and so we tried to imagine how a song would sound if we wrote them ourselves. So that's how that is. And I guess it was a tight berth for me in this small place. And anybody Googling or checking the area out there, it's called Rjukan, and it's in the county of Telemark. And if you see that from a Google Maps perspective, you'll see how narrow that valley actually is, and you understand the whole thing. So you have to actually travel to the mountains to see the sun. Most of the winter. Sometimes you could see it though, the mountainside, but it's totally absent. And it was really cold in the winter, dark. But then again, in the summer, it was really, wonderful. It was like everything was exploding and so green and a lot of flowers and stuff. So, just kind of like contrasts.
If you, because it's so dark in the winter, if you travel, are you able to see the midnight sun from there or no?
Well, not there. You have to go further up north, but it happens once in a while. It can happen also here in the eastern or southern parts of Norway, but it's rare, So, but if you go up north, it's common. It doesn't necessarily last that long, so that's the whole thing with the midnight sun. No, sorry, it's special. We don't have the same thing with the darkness. That's not normal in the south or in the east. So it's more like a southern European type of, or central European, I would say, climate where I live now and where I grew up. It's also kind of that, but because of those mountains, it was still pretty cold in the winter and a lot of snow.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, I interviewed a drummer from Norway years ago, and he told me the story about a group of Americans had heard of the midnight sun, didn't know what it was, and they came all the way to Norway to see it, and they're like, well, it's midnight, there's the sun, and they're like, that's it? Yeah, it's midnight, and there's the sun. I had no idea,
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, those other, I think, what I meant before was that not the midnight sun, but, when you, when you see all the colors in the sky,
Oh, the northern lights.
Northern lights, yeah, that's what I was about to say before. Just couldn't find the word. We see that sometimes, but the midnight sun is always up north. I played a few, festivals and stuff up there throughout the years, and it's funny when you go on stage, and it's daylight, but it's actually 2 in the night. And that's another funny thing is that you think that a festival would be over by 12 or something or 1, but up there they have bands all night. I remember Deep Purple played once, and then they were supposed to play after us, and I remember they asked us if we could play last or after them for various reasons, and they had to leave early in the morning to some other show. So we said yes to do that, but everything was delayed, and it's been going on since. I mean, it's not like it's starting 12 in the day; it goes on 24 hours. So you're bound to have some delays. So I remember we went on stage 2:30 or something like that, and we played till 5 or 4, something like that. I had some guests on stage, ended up jamming. It was, and obviously,
playing that late into the night.
Yeah, but what happens is, you have all the they're called lavos. It's the same like an Indian teepee, and these tents are that's the backstage areas. Obviously, they have some trailers and stuff, and also, but production offices and stuff like that. But it was kind of very rural and out in the open, and this is normal up there. And it was very cozy. You have an open fire. You have the reindeer skins and stuff. You sit on, and obviously people tend to get quite drunk. So and we were no exception because it's like, come on, have a drink. And yeah, but we got to play. And you won't be playing yet. It's a long time, So you start doing that, coming from the hotel or something, and then you're there like 11 or 10, 11, and you already maybe had a glass of wine or two for dinner, and suddenly you're getting drunk, and then you're not even on stage yet. So it can easily happen.
Oh, I can imagine. So did you take vocal lessons, or are you completely self-trained?
More or less self-trained. Just listening to records when I grew up. Old albums since childhood. My father came home with like Led Zeppelin stuff, and used to listen to Communication Breakdown and songs from that record, and Thick as a Brick by Jethro Tull I used to listen to. And I remember these even all the way back, like as early as around 1970, 71, and I was only like 2-3 years old. So I still remember bits and pieces of hearing those songs, So, but my first experience with real experience with music was, I guess, as a fan, was with The Sweet and the single Ballroom Blitz in 1973. So when that came out, I was a big fan instantly, and tried to dress like Brian Connolly, and my mom had to cut my hair like Brian, and totally into it. I borrowed her like silver jacket, which she had, which was like for females, but it was kind of like, I mean, these bands were like the early glam rock bands, so image-wise. So that was the first. Elvis was my number one always, and that's where the crooner part comes in, because he was there from the beginning, and also my father was a big fan of Elvis. So, but he introduced me to a lot of great bands back then, and he's a big fan of Stevie Winwood, for example, and he had great singers. Every time there would be something special, a great song, if it was Cliff Richard, Elvis, Steve Winwood, or Rod Stewart, all these guys, and Joe Cocker, he would play those records at the house, and I would get up early and wake him up like 4 or 5 in the morning, probably. I remember some of that, and they were not too happy on that.
So when you were a little kid, you used to wake up and run for the record player, put stuff on?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that's what I did basically, and I learned quickly that you had to be careful with the albums, or else my dad would be pissed off, and I learned that I couldn't play the songs if I damaged or scratched the records and stuff. So, and I probably just stopped using diapers when I learned that. So it was kind of so in that sense, the whole singing thing for me was beginning with those records, and I tried to sing. I tried to sing with a raspy voice when I didn't have it. It wasn't there, but I still tried. And I started to cough, and because I wanted to sound like the guys or the girls on the records, and I wanted to figure out how this worked out. So how they did it. So it's kind of like the records. It was all we had. Sometimes you would have maybe a show or something on TV, but we had one channel in Norway. I mean, you had like probably a lot of channels, like in the US in the 50s and 60s, they had a lot of stuff already. But
well, they originally there was only the big three in the US, so there was only a couple stations, and it wasn't until like probably until probably like the 60s and 70s that it started to expand more and more into cable and all the rest of it.
But I mean, we had like one channel all the way up till late 80s. It was only, and then we had like a couple of more, and then people started getting the Swedish channels and stuff, and Danish and TV and stuff like that, and then cable TV came around. Swedish TV we got because it's very close. Everyone living near the border or not too far from the border or if you had an antenna, the main antenna that was high and placed high, and you could get Swedish TV and stuff. So it was kind of simple and primitive, and I didn't see many live shows. It was one show that went on Fridays, starting in the late 70s, from Rock Palast in Germany. And that was where I first heard bands like Scorpions or Whitesnake and those type of bands. Or I heard some of them before on record, but never saw them live. So to see that was great, and we kind of absorbed that. All the people that I went to school with that were interested in music, we would gather around the TV, and we would meet on those Fridays and stay over at each other's houses, and it was like a big thing. We would watch that, and I remember Foreigner. I remember around like 1980, I just bought Foreigner 4 album, and then Foreigner played the Rock Palace, and that was great. I saw it live, and it was a great live performance. They didn't even play all the songs from that record because it was so fresh and new. But they played all my other favorite songs, like Hot Blooded, and those songs from the earlier Foreigner days.
Yeah, all the big hits.
All the more rock and roll stuff. Before they got commercial. Yeah.
So when do you start? Like, obviously, you probably sang, just kind of dance around, listen to music and stuff. When do you start kind of doing gigs and starting to get out there as a singer?
Well,
did you have a band like in high school with friends? Or?
Yeah, well, in '77, I had my first band when I was 9. So they were. We did some shows locally, and we sang like mostly covers, but stuff. We sang like Deep Purple songs or Uriah Heep songs, and we mixed it with everything, So, and they were spanning from like 14 years to 17 years old. The other guys in the band, so they were older, and they were already good players, or at least semi-good. Not professional, but the band sounded okay. So it was a great way for me to learn as well. And then my father is also a musician, and I used to go to the rehearsals with him and his band and fool around with instruments, and also even before that. So, and my mom used to take me on the road when my dad went touring. So I'm used to kind of, the life on the road as well, even though I can't remember a lot of it, but it certainly, shaped some of my directions, in life and what I chose to do. So, yeah. But, we obviously the first professional gigs must have been like early 80s when I would like move away from home and try to make a living from music. Tried to go to school for a while, but didn't really do anything for me, and I wasn't really interested. So I ended up one school I was, kicked out of.
Yeah.
So I was more interested in rock and roll or in music than the school. So it's a classic story. I guess as most of the people established musicians in this business have a similar background.
Oh, for sure. So I interviewed Ronnie Letecro, I can't remember how to pronounce his last name.
Yeah, well, you can say like that. We say Ronnie Letecro, but his actual name is Rolf Ågrim Tekre, which is more sounds like a Viking name, right?
Yeah, no kidding. You should have gone with
like,
that, I think.
His first name, that's like Rolf, almost like a Rollo in the Vikings series. Yeah. No, so Ronnie is a great guy. He's very idealistic with what he's doing and sticks to his guns, his style, and he was always very focused on that. Great player.
Yeah, it's I asked him, obviously about Vagabond, and he said he discovered you singing in a club. So did he just kind of approach you and say he wanted to put a new band together?
Yeah, well, we lived in the same town. I moved there, I used to live nearby there. It's kind of far away from where I grew up, but my parents used to live nearby there for a few years when I was a kid. So I had some friends there, so that's how it started. And I went there, and as a teenager, I used to go there and hang out, and also played in a band. I used to go do stuff around the area, and yeah, so we had a gig, and a friend of mine who was also a friend of Ronnie was just, inviting him to come down. That's how it happened, basically. And well, we met, and I went to see him a few times, and we started just laying down some ideas. And TNT was just about to be put on hold after those first records they did, and so that's how that came about, really, just naturally. We both wanted to do something different. You also have to remember that the time was kind of changing with Nirvana, with Rage Against the Machine, all these bands that were more grunge related, and then this kind of Seattle wave happening. And so, a lot of people were unemployed. People that would, like great guitarists, would end up becoming session players in the 90s and stuff. So they would play arenas, maybe some of them, in like 10 years before. So it was a kind of like a hybrid time for musicians that were like used to the 70s and the 80s formula in music. So I think what we wanted was to try something different and experiment with a combo of things, be more free in the compositions and writing. So I guess that's why we did this Vagabond project. To me, it was a learning process, I would say, because I did a lot of experimenting, trying to figure out how to write myself. We had some help on some songs and co-writers and stuff like that. But then on the second record, I wrote most of the stuff myself, like lyrics and melodies, everything. So it's kind of, I usually wrote all melodies anyway, always did, but lyrics, it was always a difficult challenge, especially when we were not from England or the US or somewhere. When you don't have it as a native language, it's kind of challenging to find the right words, when you sit down and try to figure things out. So it was a good learning process. So that's what I see those albums as, as a evolution thing. It was you can hear it because I'm young there, and you can, but the quality is really good. I mean, it's original. We still kept those roots that we wanted to keep, not try to be modern, doing something grungy just because that's the time or that's the trend, So it was a way of sticking to the roots and being a little bit experimental with that. And I think that's what continued in the future, in my case, when I did the records like this band we had called Arc, which we did a couple of records with, and it was very innovative and original stuff. But we tried to, combine all the best elements of our past in one band, to incorporate that into one band. And sometimes even in one song, we would put all these elements in, and you would have like bits and pieces of everything. You would have the Robert Plant-ish approach. You would have the Freddie Mercury approach. You would have even the Bjork approach here and there, just to have a flavor of something that was kind of modern as well. Everything that was related to the classic way of being an artist, like in the 70s and 80s. So, well, partly the 60s as well. But
it's funny, like I know,
yeah.
Ronnie is a big City Boy fan, for example, and like you can definitely hear some of that in Vagabond too, for sure.
Yeah, me too. We were both big City Boy fans, and long before I met Ronnie, we were like growing up with the City Boy, and we both had some of those records, especially The Day the Earth Caught Fire from '79, which I bought when it was new, and we never met. So when we met, it's like we were one of the few people, or we were some of the two of the few people in the world that were actually really interested in that band at the time, because the band wasn't really well known at the time. It was really great, everything they did, and to us, that band was the same level as any other of the bigger bands like Queen or The Sweet or that level. So, but they didn't have the same following So it has to do with probably everything, business, destiny, know.
Yeah, it's people who love that band, really love that band. And it's just, they never quite hit that point where they could have exploded and gotten a lot bigger, which is too bad because their records are great.
Well, I think there's kind of like there's a link between what you do and the success you get. It's like, why is a band like, AC/DC so popular? And why did they do so well? And it's kind of, I think it has to do with the fact that you do something very natural, something very, how should I put it, organic in a way, that, something that has to do with what you're able to do together and make this kind of unit work, musically. And I think this is different in for example, the prog metal scene, the prog rock scene. It's different because it's very hard to live up to the quality or the energy of the albums that you release. It has to do with the way you write the music. When you make it too difficult and too complex, it gets very challenging to perform it live. Of course, a lot of fans around the world, they would prefer to go to see a band that really delivers. And if you go to see a show with AC/DC or some of those more traditional, simpler rock bands, I would say, they usually sound so powerful, and sound so great live. And I think that's the winning formula and the reason for some of these bands not surviving in the business. And we see the same today, all the prog metal bands, power metal bands that put all these intricate pieces of music together and, fast drumming, a lot of orchestrations going on. It's very difficult to make that come across as a strong package when you perform live. And that's also probably one of the reasons why a lot of stuff is pre-recorded live these days. So in that sense, you can actually pull it off and it sounds great, and the people go home and they accept that they're kind of ripped off with the fact that, it's like, this is, it was great, but, some people now are used to the fact that a lot of stuff is pre-recorded and, samples and stuff like that. But so it's getting normal in the business. People don't think about the craftsmanship in the same way. So it's been accepted, which is kind of fine because it's natural, because it's the future and it's technology and all that. But to someone from my generation, it's also a bit sad because it means that this kind of fast food way of thinking is beginning to dominate the scene. That's not so great. I still believe that, it matters, what you do physically. If you're able to deliver something without any tricks or any fake elements, then I still think that's relevant. And that's what I built my career on, that you were actually able to do something real and get away with that, but yeah.
So after Vagabond, you joined the Snakes with Bernie and Mickey who were in Whitesnake, for the first 7-8 years of that band. Did you come to their attention because of Vagabond? Is that how you guys all met up?
Well, actually, my drummer, Willie Bendixson, who used to be with me for many years, and I played with him also in the 80s. We had a band, or he had a band, and he kind of, because I was a youngster, so, and he had heard about this singer that could do stuff like classic rock stuff well, and so he rang me up, and so I joined his band. It was an old band called Road back in the day, and we would tour Norway, up in the north and all the way down. It's a long country, so it's kind of like a mini version of the American coast to coast thing.
Yeah.
But still, it's a lot of, we did the same thing, it's just, smaller places to play, small villages, towns, and, we would go for like 1 month or something, on the road easily. He was working with Bernie Marsden for another project that Bernie produced. So that's how they met and, got to know each other. So, and then he introduced me to Bernie and Mickey, and played some stuff to him, some stuff that he recorded that we did live and stuff. So I think he also played some of the Vagabond stuff. Yeah, so it was like a network thing. So accidentally it just happened that way. And then we tried a few shows in Norway, smaller shows, and they were not really like advertised in a big way. They were just more anonymous, small venues, and this went well, and everyone felt this could be something we could continue doing in a more extensive way. So we ended up touring Europe and the UK, and we did a lot of stuff, everything from like city halls in the UK, and we did the smaller venues, we did big festivals. That was a cool thing. I remember playing up in Redcar where David used to grow up, and because he used to live in Redcar for a while, and so we went there and we talked to some people that remember the old days, and that knew Mickey and Bernie and David and all that stuff back in the day. So it's kind of like a good experience for me, and all the publicity that it gained certainly was a good kickoff, because even if some of the response was negative, because I would sing some of the old Whitesnake stuff and it would be quite similar to the way David sang the song, so people would kind of call me a clone or a copycat or something like that. So but that kind of and that was good, because that created some kind of thing that gave me a lot of attention, and all the positive stuff also, because at the time Whitesnake didn't do anything, and I think David did some solo stuff mostly, and so it was a good time. We played for like a few years there, and a lot of shows, and so it was a good kickoff. And then I went on from that point and started working with the more experimental stuff like Ark or Beyond Twilight. Well, I even did a record with a black metal band from Norway called Mundanus Imperium.
It's funny, that was my next question. What's funny about that band, I've actually been listening to the cover of Stargazer you guys did for probably 20 years. And when I want to say I heard it off Napster or, whatever the early internet was, right? Mm-hmm. And I a couple of years later came to learn your name and become a big fan and all the rest of it. But for like 3 or 4 years, all I had was that cover of Stargazer, and I was like, man, this is great. And I never knew who sang it for years. It's so funny.
Yeah, it was it was an interesting record. I mean, most of the other stuff was like more fast black metal stuff, and we call it space metal, or some people called it temple rock at the time, which it's a style I never heard before or after, so probably was a style that came and went with that band or that project. So, but anyway, it was a very original thing. That record, we were probably one of the first, or maybe the first, to do that combo, to do like black metal combined with more classic rock vocal thing. So that was. At the time, everyone would growl and would be very extreme. It wasn't until a few years later, I think, around the millennium, and then it started changing slightly eventually, where people would mix more classic vocals or normal melodic vocals with the black metal, and then everything started melting together. So it was kind of cool, because this was kind of the 90s still, and yeah, we were nominated for this award, the big award thing in Norway for that record, actually. It was a very spontaneous album. We didn't spend much time recording it, actually. So
you did that at Ronnie's studio, didn't you?
Yeah,
studio.
Yeah, and it was all recorded the old way. Very spontaneous record, I would say. I mean, we never planned anything. The lyrics, I would stand there like a priest, with the lyrics in a book, and I would be holding it in front of me, like a preacher man. And I had no plan for the melodies, well, maybe bits and pieces here and there, but it was more like a thing that suddenly happened, and I just sang through the songs, reading from like a book almost, and crossing over lines, and shortening things down as we went along there recording. So it was funny, because some of the stuff was like long takes where I sang something and it just, worked, and I went crazy in the studio and and kind of preached out the lyrics, and that most of that is it's what it is, on the album. So yeah, it was really cool. Stargazer. Actually, I play bass on Stargazer, believe it or not. But
Oh, I
yeah,
didn't know you were a bass player. So you play other instruments, eh?
I'm not really like a good bass player, but I played some guitar for a long time since when I was a kid. I used to learn how to play. So, but I never developed the guitar skill, to be really good. I just used it for simple stuff like writing songs, and of course I could play some acoustic stuff at the show if we did a ballad or some intro stuff, or I can play like simple stuff like a troubadour. I could probably do well, but I just use it for the songwriting in principle, and then so it's easy for me to play some bass stuff, simple bass stuff. So that song was more about playing it simple and with a certain groove, certain energy and feel. So, and since I grew up with rainbow stuff, so I knew exactly how I wanted it to sound. So I was just that I was there in the studio and we worked, and I just ended up trying to play, and then it just worked, and we spent a few more hours on it, and that song was done. So that's funny, I think it's the only song I ever played bass on, so it's funny.
How did you get hooked up with Millennium to do Hourglass? Are those local guys or?
No, I mean at that time I was it was also the early days of the record label I've been signed to for many years, Frontiers Records. So they worked with a record company in England called Now and Then Records, which existed only briefly. So the thing is, from the beginning I was signed to do a Jorn record on Now and Then Records. But then I realized later that after signing that deal and working on the first record there, which was basically just a demo, and at that time I didn't have any plan to do any solo efforts or anything. I was just, I just wanted to be like the singer in the band and focus on that. And that was the plan with Ark, for example, to have a band that would continue. Yeah, we wanted to do this magic thing, like the bands we grew up with, like Queen or Genesis or whatever, Marillion or something great, and then things didn't happen the way I thought it would happen. So I ended up releasing some demos on Now and Then Records, and then which the demos which kind of ended up being the first record. So that's why I usually never count the first album I did under the Jorn banner as the first album. I call it like the demos that led to the actual first album, which in my opinion was World Changer, which was the proper album kind of. Also, it had a few covers to the first one there with some of those demos that we used. So it was kind of like not really a proper debut album, I would say, but some good songs still, like Starfire, the opening track there. So it's a really good song, and so one of the better songs I've written probably, but there was like a hybrid mixture on that record, so that's why I kind of see it as a demo that was put together just to have an album, And it's basically because the record company, they wanted it like that. They said, "Wow, we want," because we sent them the stuff as demos, and then they said, "Oh, we want to release it as it is. You just master it well, and then we release it." And I wasn't sure, but then I agreed to do it, and sometimes money talks and bullshit walks, So
you know what though, I will say I love that record. My favorite.
Oh, thanks, man.
Well, I love, like you say, Starfire. But the song that I've probably played a million times is your cover of Just the Same from Jefferson Starship, because that's like one of my favorite songs ever. And then I was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
It's funny when I first bought the record, I was looking through the list and I go, Just
Well,
the Same.
thanks, man.
That can't be a cover for Jefferson Starship. And sure enough, I got to that track and I was like, wow. So that was very cool.
Yeah, I grew up with that band, so it's kind of, especially that record from, when was it, 79?
Yeah, point.
Yeah,
Oh
but
my God, what's the name of it?
I think
Point of. I
the
can't think of
first
it.
song I heard from that record was Jane. I think it was on the same record, right?
Yeah. Yep,
Yeah,
that was how I discovered the record too, because I love the vocals on that song, and I
yeah,
said I got to seek this record out, and just the same as like so next level as far as the vocals. It's just crazy.
yeah. I think the singing, that is beyond everything with his voice. He was always unique, and those two together, Grace, and it's just ridiculous how good they sing. No, it's a hard song to sing. We did some of those versions. I remember we did this purple song to what was it, Burn, and it was John Macaluso playing the drums. For John from New York, and he played it so fast that it was almost too fast. And I think maybe some people would say it's too stressed or too fast, but that was the high we were on at the time. We wanted to be a bit more extreme, and it's boring to record a song exactly like the other original. So, and we thought that it was cool to do something more extreme with the song, and he went crazy with the drums. So on that one, so it was fun.
You did a cover of wasn't there a City Boy song on there
Yeah, the
too?
day the earth caught fire was
That's right. That's right.
that one. So yeah, it was a good effort. It's like the original was so well produced, the City Boy record with the same name. When you listen to it now, it's kind of like, okay, we played it pretty well, but the original is still the original kind of. So I'm a bit like that. I never. I'm always very realistic with things. I know where I'm good and where I'm like close to great, stuff like that. And that has to do with the fact that you realize stuff along the way. And I never backed away from something, even if I recorded something and it wasn't exactly how I wanted it to be. I would still use it. I would try to do the best I can with the song, and try to compensate with certain things if I feel that performance is not exactly as I wanted it to be. I would maybe try to compensate with something in the arrangements or the mix. Just to use the song, and I think that has to do with the fact that we make a living from music, and times are hectic, and we don't have that opportunity anymore to sit back and wait, and analyze things for too long. Maybe you had that in the 70s and 80s, and you could actually focus on your band or on your songs for a longer period of time throughout the year, or daily. You could maybe spend more time on it. You could have a lifestyle more centered around being a full-time musician. I think we have a lot of responsibilities today, and we're like switching every day from a lot of things. The pressure of society is upon us. So we have to multitask and be like Swiss Army knives, everyone. So I think that kind of kills some of that time, where you could actually do, like, for example, 10, 15 songs that were all so great that, and then the recordings would be so perfect, and I've done it a few times with some records, but I realized, like Burn the Sun with Ark, or we did it with Beyond Twilight, the Devil's Hall of Fame. We did it with a couple of, 2, 3 of those Masterplan records. We did it with those, and we spent the extra time and went the extra mile with everything. But you realize that when you do that, most of the time you spend way too much money,
Yeah.
and you actually do it because you're an idealistic guy. You do it because you want the best result. But then again, you also want to make a living from this. So in between that record that you do once in a while, it's like the same. Life on Death Road is another example. The Jorn album from 2017, which is also like a very well crafted record. It doesn't really have any weak spots. It's a very strong album. Maybe a couple of songs are sticking out a little bit more than the others, but like the opening track. But that's why it's the title track of the album, because it's a special record or special song. Really something happened there with the band and great players, and everything was right with that record. And I think when you deliver albums like that, it takes extra time, and you spend more money on it, and also it's like you won't get paid till the album is delivered, kind of. Maybe you get some budget to work on, and but to get to the actual point where you deliver the album and go out to play some of the songs, that's where you want to be, because that's you gotta get your money and you gotta work. That's life, even though you don't like it, that's the way it is. So it's just not possible if you make a living from music today, I think, in rock and metal, to make those records as magic as you would like to. Once in a while, yes, but you have to always do something with the compromise, and I think the compromises are a bit too big, or sacrifices are a bit too big. Also, you have the other aspect. Songs are more important now individually, and albums are even though we have a lot of people still, I still love my record player or my vinyls and all that, CD player. I can still play CDs in the car, and I have a lot of friends who do the same. But the world has changed, so when we try to continue with the same formula or recipe, doing what we did in the past, and it's kind of, I'm still idealistic with it, and I still love to have a CD. All the people out there that think the same like me, it's like we kind of touch base on that, but the market is smaller, so you have to think in a different way. You can't just spend forever on an album. I mean, when we did the Duke record in 2000, when was it? 6? It was
something like 6, 7, 6. Yeah.
Yeah. So when that record was done, I mean, that's the same thing. We spent, people say, "Oh, that's one of your best albums. It's so well produced and the sound is so great." But we spent way too much money on that one too. And so they are the same thing. And so of course it's not all about how much you pay, for something. But it's more the fact that you spend too much effort on one record, which eats so much time that you really can't afford it.
Mm-hmm. Did you do that with Out to Every Nation?
And no, that record was actually faster, and you can hear it. Also, it has to do with the fact that when you co-write stuff with a certain type of musician, some people are more efficient than others. So we had like Stian Kristoffersen on drums there for that record. He's very fast, and he's a guy who even records stuff at home, and he has a setup, and he can just send you the files, and he's very efficient and quick. So he was on top of things, and the recordings went fast. Jon Viggo, guitarist for that record, is a great guitarist, so it's kind of like half of that. The members on that record were from a Norwegian prog metal band called
Pagan's Mind.
Pagan's Mind, yeah. So, and then I had like a great bass player from Sweden who used to be the bass player with Hammerfall. So Magnus Rosén. So he did the bass for that record. So they were all very structured. So that record was kind of fast. And we didn't do much production with that record. It was recorded in a more analog way and mixed in a more analog way. We didn't spend a lot of time on like samples or looking for a special sound, or it was very simple stuff used, simple delays, simple room that was used on everything, reverb stuff. It was more old school production. So that's why it doesn't sound that modern, really, the production. The band sounds modern because the combo of musicians together was kind of original. At least if you look at the style of the songs, because all those songs on that record would be perfect for like Francesco Jovino, who plays on Life on Death Row, and also on Heavy Rock Radio 2 now, and the previous one as well. So when you have that kind of classic drumming, it fits to a certain type of songs. And all the songs I've done, even from like back in the day, like the World Changer stuff, Right Termination stuff, it would fit perfectly with the drummer like that. Or Willie Bendixson, who played with me also for many years. And, the drummers with that kind of Cozy Powell feel, or the whatever, Vinny Appice feel, the Bobby Rondinelli feel, or, John Bonham, all these with a certain punch and groove. Yeah. So, but when you put more modern metal drummers on classic songs, then something happens. So in that sense, I think that was the combo that made it come out more original. Or else I think the albums would have sounded much more typical, or still good, but maybe not so original.
A bit more classic rock as opposed to taking it more in a power metal kind of direction.
Yeah, so you could say the songs were made for classic rock band, but we were not really. I mean, I was the guy maybe who was the only element with that classic background in a way, and the other guys were a bit more. They call it like prog. I call them more like technical and jazzy players. Yeah, because it's a lot of actually, always the technical stuff going on in modern metal today, especially prog metal. It's very jazzy.
Oh yeah,
a lot of jazz rock elements in it. So I think prog was a bit different in the 70s and parts of the 80s, but by like the end of the 90s, things changed, and the players were like almost jazz rock players playing with distortion. Yeah, I don't know, but it's those records were original, I think, based on the musicians, on the combo. I mean, Jan Axel Hellhammer Blomberg, who's the drummer from Mayhem, plays on the World Changer album. It's not his style at all. I mean, when we recorded it, he instantly started playing faster stuff, and the bass drums would go very fast, and I had to kind of ask him to, play straighter, and he tried that, and he found some kind of midway to do it. But still, he added his flavor to it, doing what he's doing with Mayhem or whatever other black metal bands he's been with. So it was a good, I would say, good experiment that really worked.
Mm-hmm. Here's a question for you: the records you did with Russell Allen, the Battle, the Revenge,
Mm-hmm.
all of those. Did you guys, at least at the time, had never met, right? When you did those?
No. Well, we met at the Prog Power Festival in Atlanta once, so we were talking there once, but we never meet after that. It was so we actually met once, yeah.
When you recorded those, did Magnus send you all the music with like scratch vocal tracks, or how did that recording process work with that album?
Well, that whole record was that first one or the whole concept was an idea from the record company, where they asked me and Russell if we would be up for doing something together. Then we both agreed to do that if we could find a good way to do it. So they hooked us up with Magnus Carlsson in Sweden, who wrote most of that stuff. And from the beginning, then I started writing some stuff myself on it, just bits and pieces here and there after a while. Like, for example, the last record, I did like melodies or partly melodies and lyrics for some songs, like, for example, Lady of Winter, which is a song of just because I didn't always like the approach on some of the songs, so I didn't want to write anything, to be honest. I just heard what was there, and then I heard the music separately with no demo vocals on them from like Magnus or from Timo Tolkki, and then I would suddenly write something, and it, suddenly the whole song was rewritten. But in most cases, for the first couple of records, me and Russell, we didn't really rewrite anything. We just maybe some words and sentences here and there, just because some of the lyrics were maybe not our cup of tea all the time. If something was really cheesy, or we thought it would be cheesy, I would change it. And some, of course, the melodies were changed here and there to fit our styles. But that's what happens when you start recording. You just realize that sometimes it's better to go your own way with it. But great songwriter, Magnus Carlsson. The reason why I'm not doing more of that now is because I thought we were getting to the point where we would have needed a different approach. Maybe me and Russell should be like involved writing more of the stuff together, maybe with Magnus, or maybe even another guy involved to do something to change the approach and direction a little bit, because it ended up sounding a bit like a copy of what we've done before,
Mm-hmm. So for those albums, did you both sing the entire record, or was it planned that, okay, Russell's going to sing these couple lines here, I'll sing this part, or, how did you guys both sing the full record?
Yeah, I usually asked for the chance to listen to the demos, and then I suggested which parts I would prefer to sing based on what was there, and then we just agreed which parts that would suit the best. So some stuff was better for me, some stuff was better for Russell, so we just shared it. Sometimes we just did it practically. Some songs were just easier, and we didn't really discuss anything. We just made a split. Okay, you sing the first verse, I do the second, and then we can sing together on that last bridge and whatever, and sometimes we both recorded the choruses, and then when they mixed the record, they would either keep both of us together, or they would mute me and use only Russell for bits and pieces of it, and then they would mute me back in there, and then mute him, and then stuff like that. So they were kind of like, we usually sing a little bit more than necessary, so that the producers and the people do the mix, because in that they can choose. Because in that context, we never really had any big input for the production. Not like when we do our own records. Like when I do a Jorn record, I'm there from the beginning, and I'm there for the mix. I decide everything. If something's not right, I'm together with either a co-producer or someone from the band, Like in the past, with earlier records, for example, it was me and Jon Viggo for the Duke, or Lonely of the Brave, or some of those records. We were always like nerds in the studio, sitting there. We mixed those records at Jailhouse Studios in Jylland, Denmark. So Tommy Hansen was a great guy, and such a talented, everything, musician, engineer, and he also used to be a producer. But he did also some of the Halloween stuff, like Keeper of the Seven Keys and stuff. So
well, I know he's worked with Ronnie a lot too.
Yeah. We also did the Devil's Hall of Fame there, the Beyond Twilight album. So World Changer was done there, the Duke was done there, Lonely of the Brave, Traveler, Bring Heavy Rock to the Land, we did there. I've done a lot of stuff at his studio. So I've been sitting there with me and Jon Viggo for those like 3 Jorn records. We were there like nerds and analyzing everything, and so I think he grew some gray hairs because of us at the time. Yeah, we were really going beyond with everything, and he would always say, "Come on, it sounds great. What's wrong with you guys? No, I think we should try to change it slightly. I mean, could you adjust the EQ a little bit, on whatever instrument or note?" Or we were totally crazy with it. I mean, we just want to make the best mix, and have a good record. So
That's funny. The guy that I've used for all my stuff, he basically kicks the musicians out. He says, "Let me mix. You can come back and critique when the thing is mixed." And he's like, if I'm totally not on the right path, then fine, I'll change it at that point. Otherwise, we'll just tweak what we need to when it's done.
Yeah. But of course, we didn't sit there from like early in the morning all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, we let Tommy Hansen prepare the mix and make it sound close to something that he would think that we would like and that he liked, that he thought, So, and then we would be coming in the studio, and then we would be, working on the song and up and down with things and add some effects or whatever we want to do, and just things. So it's just that in that section of work, we work maybe a bit extreme with details.
Mm-hmm. So jumping up to now, I know we're quickly running out of time. So you've got the new album out, Heavy Rock Radio 2. For this record, I got to say you've got a really interesting choice of songs. Usually, as you do, there's songs we expect more from you, like say Dio or Deep Purple's Bad Attitude. Yeah. But I mean, then you've got covers, like Pins and Needles from Jackie DeShannon, and that one completely took me by surprise. Or a Bob Dylan cover.
Needles and Pins is a great track.
That's probably my favorite on the album. I've listened to that one the most. I love it. That's great.
Thanks, man. Well, it's it was unexpected on me too, because it was actually not something we talked about or discussed. It was just suddenly happening. When we were in the studio in Italy, me and Alessandro Del Vecchio, we were looking at some songs, and we thought, like, which one should we choose? We need another couple of songs for the record, and we had a long list. There's still a list now with probably 50 songs or more. So that we never did, but which is so we could have like a Heavy Rock Radio 3 and 4 and maybe even the 5th, because we just started programming some drums actually for that, because we just wanted to do a rough demo to see if we could do something with needles and pins, and I had an idea that for a riff already, and I thought this song could maybe be cool as a more melodic with a more melodic AOR approach to it. So it wasn't nothing. It wasn't really like a revolution, the arrangement or anything. It was just a way of doing needles and pins in a bit more energetic way and slightly more modern than, let's say, the Searchers or Jackie DeShannon version, even the Smokey version from the 70s. So the song itself, is such a great classic, but kind of outdated if you look at the arrangement for the song. Ramones did it, I guess, also. But, it was a bit more like the punk wave or whatever, punky direction. But I thought, that song in a more melodic hard rock way, that could be something. I never heard a version like that before, so I thought, strangely enough, because it's a song you would think someone would have done in that arrangement, but I couldn't find it. I searched the internet and let's just do it with a more traditional AOR approach, and but then let's keep the more European sound, so it's a bit more British or whatever, how you want to put it. Yeah, so that's what we did. It's a good one. And New York Minute is another one that I like too a lot. It's kind of like a sequel to Hotel California, which we did on the first Heavy Rock Radio record, and we added that one also as a bonus track in a remastered version for the number 2 now. So, but it's kind of almost like a tradition. Also, my voice fits very well to most of the Eagles stuff, and I realized that even more when we did Hotel California, because then I learned that it worked to do it the Jorn style, everything, not just the singing but also the arrangements. So we usually try to imagine how a cover song would sound if we wrote the song ourselves. How would we go about the arrangements for that song?
So it sounds like now you've got to do, you did a Dio album, now you've got to do an Eagles album.
Well, I wish we lived for another 100 years, and we could we could do more stuff. But there's so many great songs there, and unfortunately, we won't be able to do everything. But I'm sure, if I'm still around and still healthy and going strong, then I'm sure I'll be able to do a few more of those records, and maybe I wanted to do something, stuff from, for example, Kansas stuff would be great to do. Saga, I grew up with that too, and
The great Canadian band, yeah.
Yeah, great songs, and it's either like a few songs or even the whole records that I really like a lot. So there's a lot to choose from, and ABBA, for example, great Swedish songwriters that did that with these unique voices, and the songs are fantastic. Even though it's not rock or metal.
Well, I think you could totally do a heavy version of "Give Me a Man After Midnight."
Yeah. Well, give me a woman after daybreak. After daybreak. I don't know. So anyway, it's good to do those songs. And the New York Minute was a great effort. I think we just thought that if we did that song the way we would have done it, in a more like a heavier ballad direction, it could work, and I think it worked. So yeah, it was a bit more challenging to do the arrangements for that one, to figure out how to do it. But same with when we did like Running Up That Hill with Kate Bush for the first Heavy Rock Radio album, it was that was even more challenging because there was nothing in the song that had any guitar. There's no licks, nothing, no riffs. I couldn't find any notes anywhere that would, lead to something. It was all more like a 80s or early electronica kind of thing, that she was doing back then. She was very ahead of her time with what she did. So, very unique artist. So, but that was a bit of work to figure out. But then again, not difficult. Just that we had to kind of sit down and work on the guitar arrangements and figure out what could work, and and record it. So just a more time-consuming.
Sure. Well, it's kind of nice because there's more almost songwriting in that aspect, because you're almost adding your own song to an existing song at that point.
Yeah, you have to kind of write everything from scratch and change it. So you kind of follow the chords here and there, like the original or the structure. Sometimes you can replace a keyboard structure, and you can play it exactly the same, but with a heavy guitar. It works. But for some songs, it's very difficult, or not difficult, but time-consuming to find the right arrangement. So, and that song is one of those. Even Hotel California was a bit challenging because we had to figure out all these small details there, which are almost like Brian May-ish, Queen kind of bits and pieces. It's not obvious. When you listen to the song after I'm explaining it, you'll hear what I mean, because like in the verses, there's small stuff all the time with the guitars that plays a little bit in the same way like Brian May would have done, maybe, except he would have done it probably with several harmonies to make it like a fanfare or like a national anthem kind of. We thought of some of those things, and we bring our influences into what we do. It's natural. I do that with my own songwriting too. When I write new stuff, but I'll sometimes, suddenly dive into a universe that I'm familiar with, and I know I heard it in the past. But I just let that melody lead me to something, and I write it down or read or record it. And sometimes even after the record is done, I suddenly realize, shit, that's almost exactly the same like whatever record I grew up with, or a song that, So I would think it's natural. several times I've heard melody structures I've done that's like a Styx song, or it's like a Kansas song, or it's like a, well, when I do the White Snake stuff or something like that, like then it's more obvious or more calculated. Like with me and Jon Viggo wrote a song called Duke of Love from the Duke album. That was more like something we did deliberately. We just wanted to do a song in the same style like David Coverdale would do it, so that, and because I can sing in that style easily, then I thought it was cool to have one song like that. So so I guess we were kind of falling into, or we were in that kind of the pit, or in some 70s pit of music, with so much going on, and we were young, and we were kind of absorbing everything, taking inspiration from all these various types of artists. And so I think we were kind of a bit hybrid, my generation, if you look at growing up in that time, because most of the music was so good.
Mm-hmm. And it didn't matter if it was rock or pop or whatever,
It was all so good, everything. Yeah. So I think it's kind of it's a blessing and a curse at the same time, because you get a bit schizophrenic with it, because when you write a song, it feels like when you do one thing specifically, then you feel like you're not doing a maximum of what you're capable of doing. You feel like, if I do only this bluesy thing here, like this one song, it's a little bit, reminds me a little bit of something like Free or whatever, Purple, or then you just sometimes feel that it's a bit too simple. It's like you want to go off and into all these various musical landscapes that you grew up with, and bring it all into one band or one song. And that's basically what happened with the Ark, for example. We brought all these elements together, and that's why it sounds so diverse and original, that concept, because it's I would sing in so many various ways. We have everything from the Robert Plant kind of direction, or even the Bjork style, and then suddenly you went to doing this David Bowie thing, or you did the Freddie Mercury thing, or then you were suddenly doing your classic rock thing again with a more gritty voice and metal direction or whatever. So, and we put that sometimes in one song. So it was kind of a bit schizophrenic, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of thing.
Yeah.
Extreme.
So, Jorn, I hear you've got to go.
Yeah.
I'll let you get to it, but
no
just want to say, as I'm sure big fan of your stuff, really loving the new heavy rock radio.
Thanks, bro.
And
well, thanks, mate.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear what you've got coming up next. Do you have something you're going to be doing, another one with Avantasia? Do you have any plans for that, or not yet?
Well, we're doing I guess this is going to be another record at some point in the near future. I know Toby is working on some stuff. I mean, he's always in the dungeons in his house. He disappears, and the rest of us, we are high and low, and we do a lot of stuff, and then he's gone for a year or two, and then suddenly there's a new record. So yeah, I'm sure that's going to happen, and we're going to do like a 20th anniversary thing this summer, some festival shows with Avantasia, and and I'm going to do another original Jorn record, so I'm working on that as we speak, actually, because I got some new ideas here which I'm going through, and some old stuff I'm checking out that I collected over the last few years, and so I got to pick out some of those and start working on that record. So we'll have that coming out in the next year and a half too. So, and then maybe the Heavy Rock Radio #3 could come. You never know.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. All right, Jorn, thanks again. Very much appreciate it. And looking forward to what you've got coming up next.
Yeah, talk to you again, man, soon, man. Take care, man. Cheers.
So much. Yep. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.